Hi, and welcome back to the Drama-Free Healthy Living podcast with Jess Cording. I'm your host, Jess Cording. And today I wanted to share a solo episode just to address a question so many of my clients have had recently. And so my clients, but also those, my audience on social media, people who read my newsletter on Substack, I've been getting asked again and again, how do I get enough protein? As a dietitian, trying to, I've been begging my clients to eat enough protein for years and years. And it's pretty cool that right now we're in a media cycle where it's like trendy to want to eat protein. Like, where have you guys been all this time? Not every person needs like 150 grams a day. I addressed in my last episode, just some general ballpark for how to figure out how much you need. Um, I'm also usually begging my clients to strength train because, especially for women, most of my clients are women over 35. As we get older, we start to lose muscle mass, and consuming adequate protein and strength training are two things that can help offset that age-related sarcopenia or muscle loss. And that matters for metabolism because the more muscle mass that somebody has, the higher their metabolic rate. Muscle weighs more than fat, but it's more metabolically active than fat, meaning that it burns more calories at rest than fat tissue does. So we want to have muscle, and protein is one piece of the picture to building and maintaining muscle mass. But also, protein is important for blood sugar balance. It's also important for satiety via blood sugar balance. Um, Plays a role in so many different cell processes. It's involved in cell structure. Our body gets things like amino acids that it needs for repairing tissue of all kinds through amino acids and protein foods. So there's a lot of good stuff happening there. We need protein. It's also good for our hair, skin, nails, all that good stuff. Appetite regulation. So yeah, we want to eat protein. I'll say this again, that general recommendation that maybe you've heard floating around that, a healthy adult needs about 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. I always like to point out that that is like for basic survival. Like that's about how much protein you need to stay alive. If we're talking about optimal well-being, and especially if someone is active, that number needs to be a bit higher, especially as we get older. So as a very common, just general ballpark I'll give my clients sometimes, and there may be specialized situations, right? Like depending if someone is very, very active or if they're on a weight loss journey, or they might need more protein per kilogram of ideal body weight, or their goal body weight, whether that's maintaining where they are, or whether that's losing weight, whatever that is. Or but often I will recommend like just so to help someone avoid overthinking, you want to aim for around a gram per pound of body weight. Um, that's not appropriate for every single person. So that's like a ballpark I often will use unless there's a reason that I want to be more specific. For example, if someone has chronic kidney disease, they're going to need less protein. This is maybe not the episode for someone with that as a concern, but I find so often my clients are not getting enough protein for a number of reasons. Very often if someone is skipping meals because they're busy or they're not hungry or they are trying to intermittent fast, that can make it really hard to hit your protein targets. So, if somebody, and by the way, like if someone is, like not very active, they may not need quite as much protein. Like if someone's like, but wait, I'm not active, but I weigh 150 pounds. Like, do I need 150 grams of protein? That may not be where to start, right? But as a ballpark, I generally will recommend, I've been using the word ballpark a lot today, around like 20 to 30 grams per meal if someone is eating 3 meals per day. Or if someone is only eating 2 meals per day, I find lately I have a lot of clients that when I first meet them, that's like their pattern. Then you want to bump it up a little bit to like, 35 grams per meal and then have a high protein snack somewhere in there. Um, so if you see that number, 100 grams a day floating around, as a dietitian, I don't think that's garbage. I know that there's a lot of opinions in the field. And depending on someone's specialty or their training, I don't think 100 grams a day sounds crazy. And I think that even for someone who is small, especially if they're active, that can be appropriate. But always, you are the expert on you. I am a registered dietitian, but I am not your registered dietitian, to borrow a line from from my friend and colleague DJ Blattner. Um, so just this podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only, not a replacement for medical advice or one-on-one work with a healthcare provider. But just to give you an idea of where the numbers I'm where you know why I'm kind of recommending some of the numbers I do. And the reason, though, that protein recommendations are what they are is that it's based on, I mentioned the amino acids earlier. A lot of it is about how our body can get the amino acids it needs to do all the things that are needed. So that's where a lot of those initial recommendations come from. And then when we look at things like promoting like retention of muscle mass and such, it gets more nuanced. So anyway, I've been finding though that my clients need help figuring out how to get in more protein. So I wanted to share just 7 of my favorite easy ways to do that. You can use all of these. You can start with 1 or 2. You figure out what sounds good to you. But I just wanted to share 7 easy ways to add protein to your meals and snacks. So one that my clients have found really approachable is just start by adding some collagen or protein powder to something. So I have a lot of people that I work with for whom coffee is breakfast. I don't agree with this. I don't think coffee should replace breakfast, but if someone's not feeling hungry in the morning or their lifestyle right now makes it really hard for them to sit down and eat a meal, I'm not usually going to start with telling that person, well, no, you must sit down and eat, eggs and toast with cottage cheese and, or make your own breakfast sausage. Like, I'm not going to go down that road. But for someone who's maybe feeling overwhelmed about the idea of getting protein in the morning, that person, I might start with, okay, cool. Let's put a couple scoops of collagen powder in your coffee. Start there. It's going to give you 20 grams of protein. You barely had to do anything. Or there's so many different protein powders out there right now, plant-based and animal-based, that can be a nice addition to coffee or even water or milk of choice. Shake that up. Like, I worked with a lot of clients who just found it easy to just drink a protein beverage on their way to work, whether that's something that a powder they buy they mix with liquid, or if it's a ready to drink that they purchase. Those things can be very convenient. Or for my oatmeal lovers, collagen powder, protein powder, awesome way to add some easy protein to your morning. But also later in the day, like if you're eating a soup that's, a vegetarian soup or it doesn't have much protein, you could totally add a scoop of collagen powder or unflavored protein powder. I've done that for years and years, especially during busy phases where I was needing to rely on, more like soups and things, or I was just trying to use up a bunch of stuff. You can really do a lot with doctoring up some simple things. Or you can even add stuff like that if you're making like mashed potatoes, or like I've totally done this with if I'm making like a dish where there's like different vegetables and a sauce, like you can definitely add that kind of stuff to the sauce. Like, get creative as you want to. Um and of course you can make smoothies. I have one almost every morning, and that's such an easy way to do that. I also love protein powder and chia pudding as well. Another place to look at is high protein dairy or dairy alternatives. So I love, love, love plain Greek yogurt and cottage cheese for this. In a 3/4 cup serving of Greek yogurt, you're going to get like 15, 16 grams of protein, easy right there. Similar to cottage cheese, like like a half cup serving is about like 13, 16 grams, depending on the brand. So that you can have it as a snack. You can add it to things. I love cottage cheese on toast or wasa crackers. Like, that's a nice, easy way to bump up a little protein. Like something I would do a lot when I was working in an office and would bring my lunch. I would have something like, like a salad with like beans and stuff in it, but then that wasn't quite enough protein. So I would add cottage cheese to that salad. Or if I was doing something, maybe you put cottage cheese on toast or crackers or something like that. If I just needed to bump up the protein a bit to get close to that 20 or 30 grams, super convenient, because 1/4 cup of cottage cheese is like 8 grams right there. Super easy. If you don't consume dairy, there are a few high protein plant-based alternatives. So there are a few plant-based Greek yogurts. So those are available. There are, plant-based cheeses. They don't tend to have a lot of protein if you really look at the labels. There may be some exceptions I don't know about. Um, Certain non-dairy milks have protein. So pea protein milk and soy milk, 2 examples of that. So those are also available. And you can use that stuff either having it as is. You can use it like if we're doing the non-dairy milks, you can use that to cook oats or rice or quinoa. You can use it in smoothies. You can add Greek yogurt. I have a lot of clients actually who really love Greek yogurt and cottage cheese mixed into oatmeal. So it might sound kind of weird, but it's actually really delicious. So you totally can get creative. And then you can also play around with adding like nuts, seeds, or nut butters to things. And people always ask me, Jess, what's a nut butter? And I always have to like fight the urge to laugh because maybe just because I'm a dietitian, like it's just been so drilled into me that term. I'm like, well, yeah, it's like almond butter, or it's not a nut, but peanut butter, legume butter, I guess that would be sunflower seed butter, but like all the butters um, made from like nuts, seeds, legumes. Those can also be a convenient way to add a little protein. You're not going to get a ton. I'm going to be totally honest. Like a serving of almond butter, you're going to get like 7, 8 grams per 2 tablespoon serving. Hemp seeds, you'll get about 10 grams per 3 tablespoon servings. So I wouldn't rely on these foods exclusively to reach your protein needs in a meal, but they're a great way if you're having a few different things that have a little bit of protein, it can add up. So, if someone was eating 2 eggs, that's about 12 grams of protein right there. One way to get closer to that 20 gram, maybe they add 3 tablespoons of hemp seeds, and that is going to be 22-ish grams of protein. So it's little ways to um, up your intake. And then, of course, choosing high protein grains and legumes. Okay, so one of my like pet peeves as a dietitian though is I really hate when people say that quinoa is a source of protein. It is not. It is not a good source of protein. It has 5 grams of protein per serving. That's not very much. But the reason I think it gets that label is that there is something called a complete protein. And what that is that our body can make some amino acids, but there are some that it can't make called essential amino acids. So we need to get these from foods. And there are some foods that contain all 9 of these essential amino acids. And then there are some that contain some of them, but not all. Um, for the most part, most animal proteins contain all 9. Collagen powder is an exception. It contains 8. Um, but then a lot of the plant forms of protein might contain, a number of these, but not all 9. There are some exceptions though, like soy and actually quinoa, which is technically a seed. Nutritionally speaking, it's a little more similar to a grain, so more similar to a high protein grain. But you are going to get all 9 essential amino acids in quinoa. So I think that's where it gets that moniker. But it's not a good source of protein, guys. Like, don't if you have protein, if you have quinoa in a salad, you still need some more protein. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say that. Um, but when you are incorporating like the quinoa or like lentils and chickpeas, like those and other beans, like black beans, pinto beans, like all the beans, they do add some protein as well. Like in a half cup serving of chickpeas, you'll get about 6 or 7 grams per serving. So, that's another way to add some. So you can add these things to salads, soups, grain bowls, just to up your protein a little bit. Something else you can do with these different grains and legumes, you could cook them in bone broth. Just in general, when swapping bone broth in place of water or like regular veggie, chicken, beef broth, um, that's a great way to up the protein because 1 cup of bone broth has around 10 grams of protein. So when you compare that to like the 1 gram you're going to get in traditional like vegetable, chicken, beef broth, like that's a pretty good upgrade. So if someone is looking to get more protein, I will definitely recommend using those. Either, maybe you cook your rice in it, or if you're making savory oats, or you cook quinoa in it, or if you're making soup, use bone broth instead of traditional like chicken or veggie broth. You can also bump it up even further by using things like legume-based pastas, because those are going to provide extra protein as well. So again, kind of cobbling it together from some other sources. And then, as I'm recording this, eggs are really expensive. I'm curious to see what it looks like when this episode actually comes out. But eggs can also be a convenient way to add protein. So you can add eggs or egg whites for extra protein in things like scrambles, omelets, baked goods. I went through a phase in my 20s where for years, almost every damn day, I would eat oatmeal with egg whites cooked in. And that was a really convenient way to work in more protein. Or if you're kind of stretching leftovers, I do this a lot in my own life today, is I'll I'll have maybe like some leftover vegetables. Maybe there's a little bit of like chicken or turkey or beef or something in there. And then I add an egg or two just to bump up the protein. And it's satisfying, it's easy, simple is good. And then lastly, for my plant-based friends, you can get, and you don't have to be plant-based to enjoy this, by the way. But I get the most questions about it from people who are plant-based is tofu. This is a super versatile food that actually really easily absorbs flavors. And I sometimes get a little pushback about soy in general because there is a lot of mis and disinformation out there about it. Um, like so I'm very comfortable unless someone has an allergy or a condition for which soy is contraindicated, like maybe Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Um, Actually, soy in its whole form, so like tofu, tempeh, edamame, miso. I would also put soy milk in this category for the most part. That's actually been associated with reduced risk of breast cancer, heart disease. Also, some studies have shown possibly may be effective in reducing hot flashes in women transitioning into menopause. So there are some benefits to soy beyond the protein, but not all soy is created equal, right? So if I'm recommending soy to a client, I will say like, yeah, you know what? If you want it, you want to check it out, go for the organic, non-GMO soy. Like, very okay with that. Again, unless someone has a condition or an allergy for which it's not appropriate. So type of soy I tell people to limit is like the fake meat soy or like the soy protein powders. Like, not necessarily because that type of soy is inherently bad, but when we're talking about the protective benefits, the something seems to be lost in that processing. Like some of those protective benefits are no longer there. And I guess if you think about it, if you're isolating the protein from that soy plant and putting it into a food that has minimal nutritional value to start with, you're not going to get much benefit, like big picture. So just to know that, like once in a while, those foods have their place. And I think we've seen a lot of innovation in the meat alternatives category in general. And, I definitely have like tried a bunch of different products in that category. And there are some that I think are great. There are some that I think are just, still garbage. But it's definitely better than it used to be. But that said, whenever we can choose things in its simplest form, closest to how nature intended it, I think that's always best case scenario. But there are these convenient options as well. So those are just 7 of my favorite ways. With the tofu, I guess I didn't finish that thought. You can scramble it, make like a tofu scramble. You can blend silken tofu into smoothies or soups to make it creamy or use it in baked goods. You can also just like cube it and bake it and make a nice, easy protein to add to all kinds of dishes, whether it's like stir fries or salads or grain and veggie bowls, stuff like that. So you have a lot of good options here. And like I said, I just shared a bunch of tips with you. This is like the tip of the iceberg. There are so many more things that I could have shared with you today about protein, but these are a few that I commonly share with my patients and clients. So I hope that you found them useful. And I'd love to hear which ones you check out. I would love for you to maybe take a screenshot of yourself listening to this episode or take a screenshot of which of these you try. Tag me on Instagram at Just Courting. And if you want more tips on what to eat, I would highly encourage you to sign up for my free newsletter, WTF to Eat. That's at jessicacourting.substack.com. And every week I share different tips and tools for how to fuel your body and mind to optimize your health and fitness. I would love to see you there. So, as always, guys, I so appreciate you being there. I hope you have a wonderful day. Um, if you like what you hear, please consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. They help me continue to bring you great content to improve your health and well-being. So yeah, have a wonderful day and we'll talk soon.